We think, therefore we are. We are, therefore we do. We do, therefore we invent. And oh, we invent. Right from the beginning, we've been inventing for the basics, for the revolutionary, for the thing of beauty and wonder, to constantly recreate and reimagine the world we live in. And those inventions, they've made the world easier, richer, more fulfilling, more right for everybody. And each of them began just as a thought, a moment of, what if? Followed by a determined, why not? In that moment, an inventor is born. And the key to their success lies in the unusual idea they don't dismiss. It lies in their courage to challenge the status quo. It lies in the way they blend science, process, creativity, and hard work. It lies in their foresight that what I do today will have a lasting impact on the world. It lies in that magical moment when their idea stops being radical and becomes commonplace, difficult to live without, normal. And with that idea, they changed the world into what they imagined it could be. At TCS Research, we seek out and nurture these thinkers and doers. We aspire to create those life-changing, business-changing, humanity-changing inventions. With scientists and researchers and experts from across industries and disciplines, we collaborate to make people healthier, to provide clean energy, to make the digital world safer so that from different corners of the world, more inventors can have their moment of, what if? Why not? We invent for today, for tomorrow, and for the tomorrow after that, to create the future that's ours to shape, to make an impact on everything there is and on everything yet to come.
Welcome to the webinar on experiential technologies, titled Beyond Screens, Spatial Intelligence and the Rise of XR-Augmented Human Cognition. We are excited to have such an esteemed panel of scientists and professors who will shed light on this field. To start the session, we have a short presentation by ACM spokesperson, Dr. R. Venkateswaran. Dr. Venkateswaran, also known as Venki, currently engaged as a professor of practice, is an industry thought leader with more than 30 years of IT industry experience. He was associated with Persistent Systems for 20 plus years and had undertaken various leadership roles during his stint there. Prior to Persistent, he worked for 7 years as a researcher at Bell Laboratories and also in the CTO office at Lucent Technologies. He is actively associated with several academic institutes and works towards fostering the industry-academia interactions. He holds degrees from very prestigious universities and has authored numerous research papers. Let us welcome him on stage. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rudra. Let me share my screen and give a brief overview of ACM India. Just give me 1 second. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. Let me briefly introduce you to what ACM India is. Many of you may be aware, ACM is one of the world's largest educational and scientific computing society that, with its sole mission of fostering computing as a science and as a profession, was established in 1947, coincidentally the same year that India got its freedom. And worldwide, there are about more than 100,000 members, professional and student members, out of which 18,000 are based out of India. ACM India was established just 15 years back in 2010, and we have grown significantly since then, spanning across 350 student chapters and more than 22 professional chapters. ACM India also has a very strong focus on empowering and encouraging women in computing, and it does this through the 60 or plus ACMW chapters spread out all over India. There are many activities that ACM India champions. Some of them are in the area of learning and professional development, which is primarily to engage with the professional members and, of course, the student members as well. Some of the activities that we do there are the eminent speaker program. We do industry and education webinars. We conduct some fireside chats, something similar to this on a very regular basis, with the sole objective of fostering industry academia engagement. All of this comes under the what we call as the external engagement initiative of ACM India, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this initiative. Outside of the professional development activities, we also do a lot of focus on research initiatives, catering to both student and professional researchers through various activities like ROCS, which is Research Opportunities Computer Science, through PhD clinics and Invention Setus, which mentor PhD students, and through various conferences like CORDS, COMAD, ISEC, and so on. We also sponsor a lot of educational initiatives geared towards student community through the summer and winter schools, which is a 2-week immersive experience for the students in areas which are emerging areas and typically not covered as part of an undergraduate curriculum. We also engage with the faculty through teacher partnership program to co-teach certain courses in certain colleges. And we focus on the school children through the Spatial initiative. And more recently, we have now started sponsoring the India AI Olympiad, and we have some stellar outcomes from this India AI Olympiad initiative. Notwithstanding all these initiatives, we also recognize the student chapters and the professional chapters through various awards. And that's something that helps us to keep the student community and the professional community motivated. To be able to do all of this, we obviously need help from various institutional partners, and we have at 3 tiers. IBM is one of our silver tier partners. Ola Electric is a gold tier partner. And we do have 4 partners in the platinum tier: Google, Persistent, Infosys, and TCS Research. I do want to call out here that TCS Research has been one of the early supporters ever since 2011, so 15 years. They have been sponsoring the best doctoral dissertation award being given out to the best, obviously the best doctoral dissertation. For every year we hand out one such award, and it's been TCS Research has been sponsoring this for the last 15 years. So I do want to take a moment to thank TCS Research for all their support. If you are interested in one of the activities or any one of the activities, please do become a member. The link to join is given here along the QR code. It's a very easy process, and we'll be happy to support you in case you face any challenges. Please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to introduce ACM India to all of you. And back to you, Rudra, to take it further.
Thank you for this informative presentation on ACM India. And now we can begin our keynote speech. Our keynote speaker is a very eminent personality in the field of experiential technologies. Professor Karthik Ramani is the Donald W. Feddersen Distinguished Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Purdue University, with additional appointments in electrical and computer engineering and a courtesy role in the College of Education. He leads the Convergence Design Lab, where his research brings AI into the physical world by blending human-centered AI with spatial intelligence. He has recently published in top-tier venues across computer vision, human-computer interaction, and AI. He has also founded initiatives and startups, both educational and industrial, that have received awards along with creating real-world impact. He was a visiting professor at MIT, Stanford University, Oxford University, and a research fellow at PARC, formerly Xerox PARC. He earned his BTech from IIT Madras, MS from the Ohio State University, and PhD from Stanford, all in mechanical engineering. He currently also serves as a coach of Purdue's table tennis team, where research meets passion in the emerging domain of athletic AI. He will present a keynote on the future of interactive XR authoring. Let us welcome him on the virtual podium to share his insights. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Rudra. Great. Is the screen sharing good? Thank you. So let me start. First, wanted to thank the team and also TCS Research in terms of strong support for our activities, as well as other sponsors for our research, such as NSF, DARPA Industry, and the Federason Endowment, as well as all the students that do the great work that I'm going to present today. First of all, let me sort of very quick rewind on the past. Augmentation, that is human and machines working together, is not new. Of course, the very first demonstrations of human and AI working together in early forms of what it was done long time ago by Doug Engelbart using the mouse. And it's known as the mother of all demos. And he also not only envisioned interaction of human and machine, but also did demonstrations beyond that. Of course, the mouse and keyboard have become mainstays for interaction. But Doug also showed what will happen if you put a camera and a machine on the human's eye and augment the human in terms of what they do. If you think about it, augmented reality, which is what we are going to be talking about today to some level, and spatial interactions, is for the first time, we are looking at putting a machine in the human on the eyes, as well as looking in front, looking at your interactions, what you do with the hand, what you do with the body. And also now with the large language models, we have even greater power. We can align the language, what we are saying with what we can do, and putting it all together, we can start creating interactions with the machine in real time. This has tremendous applications as we look forward in terms of what we can think machines can do along with humans. There have been numerous companies which have been attempting to go after the space with headsets, and you'll see HoloLens, Apple Vision Pro, and more recently, simpler versions of this, such as collaborations between Meta and many other manufacturers of headsets. And these types of wearables are starting to have impact in terms of how humans and machines will interact together. So as I mentioned, this is the first time that we are going to see in the real world a spread of potential technology that is going to look at us in terms of moment to moment, what we can share and do. First of all, let me qualify a little bit of what we can think about physical AI. Physical AI here enables us to bring perception, understanding, and complex interactions of humans with the physical world. What does this mean? What it means is that we can start combining all the powers of AI, which we are seeing in the last 2 or 3 years, play a big role in terms of companies, what they do, jobs, and the future of how humans and machines will work together. It's kind of taken a lot of our attention. But more importantly, if you take the same AI and put it along with what we are calling extended reality, that is what we can see and do, coordinated with what we can say, we can see that we can create a huge future in terms of what extended reality can do with us. Also, I want to sort of qualify using this term embodied interaction. So I sort of say mind over hands and body. What does it mean, right? So what it means is that we can now bring the technology of what we put in our headset together with what we do with our body and also with our gestures, our actions, how we communicate, how we infer our intent, what we are going to do, etc. And then we can start doing a lot of interesting things with it, such as we can control a lot of things using voice and intent. We can start controlling with gesture, with interactions, and also we can trigger what we call Internet of Things, which can become more aware of a lot of our activities, ambient living issues, and also a lot of our scientific experiments, human-robot interactions, and many other things. So embodied interaction becomes really important in terms of how we can think about how humans and machines will communicate with each other. Sort of moving this one step further, research in this area has been going on for a very long time. In fact, I would say that it starts along with the history of human-machine interaction and even prior to what Doug Engelbart did in the 1960s. So we have been looking at a lot of these technologies since 2008 and 2011, of course, the deep learning came along. And more recently, since 2020, 2021, the transformer model has sort of revolutionized both large language models as well as large vision models. So interacting with ordinary objects is now possible. We can react to virtual contents. We can get trigger IoT. We can interact with robots. And more importantly, all these areas have been undergoing research for a while. Position tracking, gaze tracking, hand tracking, object detection, scene understanding, etc. So I put together with augmented reality, our interaction in space, spatial references, and a lot of things are possible now. We can, in fact, author these programs in situ simply by using our voice, language, and body gestures. So I want to sort of emphasize that 3D is not just equal to 2D plus 1D. There are a lot of other hidden dimensions. So these types of hidden dimensions make interacting in augmented reality not that simple. It's not as easy as taking a phone and creating a video, which of course at one time was a difficult thing to do. So I'm going to break up this presentation into 3 chunks: understanding, authoring, and interacting. The central vision here has been to augment the human. And also we want to augment the human by blending the digital and physical environments. So moving on, I'm going to give you a feel for understanding, which is perceiving, spatial recognition and geometric reasoning, predictive motion modeling, and also this enables new models of perception. Second stage, I want to talk a little bit about authoring, which is related to our imagining. Just as we talk about things we can do, can we also author these programs, sort of make the environment codeless in order for us to create extended reality workflows and environments? So I'll give some simple examples of agentification of such environments and so on. And finally, the interacting. How do we respond? How do we manipulate? How do we collaborate in such environments, right? So again, we'll be sort of bringing, again, multimodality of communication, designing for feedback and ergonomics and social interaction, for example. By aligning these 3 stages, the perception, what we want to do, which is authoring and creating these programs, and interacting with these environments, we can lay the groundwork for what we call the intelligent, embodied, and essence of the entire physical AI emergent world. So sort of moving on to the understanding part, I'm going to give you very quick examples. So sort of ignore the equations here, but what I'm showing you here is one of the early models that we developed in terms of action recognition, which is very important for understanding what humans as we do in 3-dimensional environments. So this is the earlier work, as I mentioned, but more importantly, as I said, right, this allows us to understand human interactions using gesture and language, but also we can try to combine this with many other things. So without taking too much ado with trying to explain the theory behind it, here you can see, right, for example, when the hand is moving, the hand is related to the rest of the body. And so we are able to discriminate between different types of actions that humans are doing. For example, hand waving, pointing, clapping, checking time, all of these different types of gestures can be discriminated very nicely simply because we have a very in-depth model which relates the position of the hand to all parts of the body in real time. And some of these interactions, as you can see, the more thicker the lines are, those are much stronger interactions. And so we have an implicit representation with a graph, and this works in real time. Moving further, can we sort of recognize action before they happen? So it turns out that human action recognition is challenging, but it's definitely possible if we are able to represent these types of motions as ordinary differential equations. But more importantly, what do? Basically, it allows us to convolve these using self-attention. Attention, of course, many of you probably know, attention is all it takes, is the central part of the transformer model. So analogous to that, we can also capture spatial relationships, how our body is connected to other parts, and we can train it. And only with partial observations, when an action begins, we can start estimating, just like how humans do, the machine can start estimating what we are about to do. So given all of that, I'm going to move a little bit into authoring. So understanding is one key part. But in terms of creating these augmented reality applications, we need to create these programs. So a lot of our work in our lab has, in this area, has been combined with codeless environments. And for example, this is one of these areas. For example, let's say you're going to work on machines, you're going to open up the machine. You need support in terms of how to set up the machine, how to start start the machine, how to attach the objects, how to start the laser, etc., etc. A lot of these types of work, like procedural instructions and so on, assembly operations, all of these in the past have needed us to create augmented reality programs, which take a lot of effort, a lot of cost. And by the time you create it, you've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. And imagine if you want AR to be as expansive as YouTube videos are today. If you think of that, you just cannot sustain it by using humans for all these types of operations. So what we have created in this environment, for example, once you author these programs, simply by going around the machine and saying what you want, you can sort of allow the machine to recognize the user state. So based on the user state, the machine decides, as opposed to you deciding, when it's going to help you and how it's going to help you. So the interaction is two-way, not only between you and the machine, but also between the machine and you. And in this case, we represent the machine as an avatar, which will come and show you what to do. So the avatar actually adapts to you, just like how a coach would adapt to a lot of your motions and interactions. And we divide the level of detail of how that adaptive avatar is going to work with you when you're doing training, for example. So a lot of our applications here have been in terms of training for aerospace applications, critical operations, surgery, and so on and so forth. Sort of moving to the next stage, I'm going to talk a little bit about interaction. Can you see the screen here, Rudra?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start giving you some simple examples of provoking actions, for example. Here you have a discrete input, and output is discrete and a static input. For example, a gesture, and then you want some provoking action. So here, as soon as the hand comes in, the light lights up. So all these types of action interaction we can author in terms of just using our language and what we want to do. Here you have created a virtual mug out of the physical mug, and you want it to move along with your hand, just like how you would manipulate a real mug. So again, we have continuous action for manipulation, and the input and output are coordinated. But also you can do dynamic actions. For example, here you want your Coke can to vanish and splatter when you close your hand. So we make the gesture very dynamic, and also the action-reaction models can be autonomously coordinated. Here we are trying to make the external world respond in terms of how we move our hands. So we have a dynamic input and continuous output. So as you can see, a lot of these types of interactions using input-output modalities and simple ways of interaction can all be created without actually writing a single line of code. How do we think about such things as we go down in the future? This is one of our very recent works where we use a number of agents and agentify the environment where we are creating augmented and virtual reality. So what we have here is not just a front end for a user interface, but we also have on the back a layer that encapsulates sensing, perception, reasoning, all of these using hand, gaze tracking, physical simulation, and other things that you can bring. The front-end layer provides the rendering, the user interface, and all the 3D asset tools. So you don't have to go to inside Unity and create a lot of these assets. They are all instantiated depending on what the user wants. And the agent produces semi-structured plans and describes the tools, the attributes, coordinates all the back-end actions, and then it invokes these AR scenes as and when needed. Users can iteratively refine this using natural language for even editing what you want. For example, you can add timer. Here, the user wants to get help in making and setting up a coffee making machine and go through a process in a particular manner. And it also, of course, can coordinate with the language of the user. So going further beyond agentification, we also very recently demonstrated how you can coordinate gesture and voice together. So in this system, user can talk and you can gesture. For example, maybe you're adjusting a picture frame, in this case, in virtual reality, but you can also do this in augmented reality. So the language model is tokenized, and the spoken language is then coordinated with the gesture. So this way, you can not only just disambiguate what the user is saying, but also allow the user to control many of the things that he wants to do in the most convenient way. Sort of fast forward, we talked about all this augmented reality and virtual reality and so on and so forth. But the most common media we use today is video. So in this most recent work, which is going to be presented very soon in the ACM Chi conference in June, we will be demonstrating ARify. So what we do here is simply using narrated instructional videos, we can create augmented reality tutorials for procedural tasks. This is very interesting. So we not only are able to take the various keyframes, but also the narration. We're able to create a tutorial structure using a lot of the capabilities of LLM. We are able to decompose these tasks. And not only that, if you're using objects during this demonstration, we instantaneously, using a lot of techniques of computer vision that can now be made to work real time, convert these objects into three-dimensional artifacts, which you can continue to use during the tutorial. So just using a video and simple interactions, we can create environments where augmented reality can start working for the user in real time. So I'm going to quickly, finally, of course, show you how AR can come to action. We like to be grounded in a lot of our work. So we have been using not only AR for creating interactions between humans and humans. In this current work, an AI coach can come and help you while you're playing after you play. So very quick demonstration here. So I'm going to quickly show you here. Of course, as Rudra mentioned, I'm also the coach for the Purdue table tennis team. We are one of the top 10 teams. I've been coaching them for 4 years. And what better than me starting to use table tennis, not only for helping create augmented reality, we also have used the same pipeline to actually make a humanoid play table tennis. We are one of the top 3 teams that have actually been able to demonstrate legged humanoids to play table tennis that can start learning from humans. Of course, its level is at the beginner level, but as you can see here, the augmented reality coach is now highlighting portions of the body which are need correction. It also tracks the paddle in real time and then comes back alive after you wear a headset to help you coordinate these actions. So I'm going to sort of start winding down here. So you can see a little bit more of real-time overlay of the paddle and the handle. So the coach comes real-time and tries to help the human play and improve the game. So moving past this, so in spite of all of this, you might be asking, none of you are actually using AR, none of you are using VR. This meeting is happening on Zoom. Why is all this technology not real yet, right? There are a lot of issues here, and companies have spent billions of dollars in this area, and time and again, they are trying to get back into it. A lot of these issues are related to time consumption, lack of automated workflows, such as some of what I demonstrated, very difficult to maintain and update these programs. And putting all this together, of course, the hardware adds up. As you can see now, the attempts are all starting to go bottom up, trying to come up with more simpler classes, simpler interactions, hoping that this will get traction. Monetization has been a big issue in AR, VR, but also I sort of contend that this is the right time to put emphasis on AR because AI has now become powerful enough, computer vision has become powerful enough that we can start attempting these problems once again. As Dr. Brajeshwar here also will attest to it, that the combination of HCI and AI together, when you combine them, there's opportunities that are opening up. So in terms of software, also predicting human activity, difficult to obtain feedback, and also the user experience, as we know, has to be at the end very good. So unless we are able to put and bring all these together in an ecosystem where people can create themselves, people can edit these things themselves at ease, and make it as easy as we are using a phone and a video today, these things will not be possible to take it pervasively across all people using it. Just a very quick snapshot. Broj is going to be talking about this further, but very quickly a snapshot in terms of what we can expect to anticipate in the future. Already agentification, as you know, teams like ours, we have already demonstrated it. We are perhaps the first to do this. Task-centered agents, real-time environment modeling, multimodal authoring, and so on for education, design, and training. And then, of course, some other estimates are more symbiotic systems by 2030, collaborative intelligence, and then augmentation, for example. I'm guesstimating that will happen in 2035, and more ubiquitous physical AI down the road in 2045 timeframe. So sort of to end, are we on time, Rudra?
Yes,
Good.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm going to sort of start winding down here. This is perhaps my last slide. So basically, in terms of spatial and spatial reality, one of the big points I was trying to make earlier is 3D is not just equals to 2D plus 1D. There are many hidden dimensions, especially when you bring the human in. You just can't ignore how humans will want to interact, how they will interact, and their expectation in terms of what the spatial reality application will do. Also, more importantly, as I said, just as in happening in the flat AI, now workflows are being more and more automated. They're not very dissimilar from it. Also, agentic workflows and these multimodal interactions are going to make reality more possible. So this is going to definitely change the so-called jagged edge of human AI. What do I mean by jagged edge? This is simply, even as you see with LLMs and so on, they tend to do certain things extremely well, certain things they don't do very well. And these kinds of interactions, of course, when you combine it with spatial interactions and we make all of this come together, a lot of bottlenecks will continue to remain. But limited set of workflows, I see there is possibility for creating very compelling applications at very low cost as we move forward. They're going to be available with future hardware. And also, I think this is great for like a service industry, which is why we are collaborating with TCS, and services eventually will turn around and become user applications. And this will cater to end user experiences and will drive change. Monetization at scale has always been a challenge for companies in this area, but it's possible. So with that, I wanted to end my presentation. So thank you very much for all of you to have listened to me this far. If you want to experience more of this, we're going to see more of these types of demonstrations being done, but also in panel, we are collaborating with TCS and many of their customers in order to make these future realities become real. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Karthik. You have given such an insightful talk on the past, present, future, the challenges, and an overall comprehensive outlook on what lies next. And that really lays the groundwork of the fireside chat that we have coming up next. So now, after this enlightening talk, we have an equally insightful panel discussion. The topic for that is the egocentric AI for XR. For this, we have a diverse panel of experts. Let me give a brief introduction of our panelists. First, we have Professor Shanmuganathan Raman. Professor Shanmuga is a prominent academic and researcher in the field of computer vision, deep learning, computational photography, and computer graphics. He is a professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, where he holds a joint appointment in the departments of electrical engineering and computer science engineering. He is the head of the department of CSE at present. Additionally, he served as the Jibaben Patel Chair in Artificial Intelligence at the same institution. We have Dr. Jainendra Shukla. Welcome. Dr. Jainendra is an associate professor of IIIT Delhi and the founder director of the Human-Machine Interaction HMI Research Group. He holds a PhD with industrial and international doctorate distinctions from URV, Spain. His research focuses on effective computing, social robotics, and ubiquitous computing with the broader goal of enabling emotionally intelligent and adaptive interactive systems for health, social care, and immersive technologies. Next, we have Dr. Devaditya Roy. Dr. Devaditya is an assistant professor of computer science and engineering at IIIT Kharagpur, where he leads research at the intersection of spatial intelligence, computer vision, and AI. His work focuses on embodied perception, action anticipation, and predictive scene understanding, capabilities that enable machines to reason about dynamic environments in space and time. Finally, we welcome Dr. Brojeshwar Bhomik. Dr. Brojeshwar is a principal scientist and head of the Visual Computing and Embodied Intelligence Research area at TCS Research, Kolkata. With over 2 decades of experience, His work spans computer vision, computer graphics, and artificial intelligence, focusing on creating interactive 3D representations of the physical world of embodied agents, capable of reasoning and action. Along with them, joining them in the panel is our keynote speaker, Professor Karthik Ramani. To begin our discussion, we want to start with questions that introduce us to the field. And that is why my first question, continuing from his keynote, is to Professor Ramani. Professor, what do we mean by spatial intelligence? How is it different from other versions of AI that are out there?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. So spatiality is just like how we interact with things we do. We're able to pick up things. We know this is a glass of water. I know this is my phone. I know this is a business card. Easily able to pick it up, know what it is, know how to interact with it. And this intelligence develops as we grow, as a child, as we learn to interact, as we learn to modify, as we start building things. We develop so-called muscle memory and so on, right? Which is sort of an oversimplified term. But embodiment is in our body, and the coordination between our perception, what we see, what we do, what we say, and how we touch and move things. All of this gives us intelligence. But when we talk about machines and robots, we are nowhere close to it. So spatial intelligence is the intelligence that we develop naturally to interact with the physical world, and all current forms of media are far away from reaching that. The one that is going to get us there is immersive, augmented, and these types of realities that will help machines interact with us better and make us do better in the real world.
Thank you for that perspective. And picking up from there about immersive and augmented realities that are always on. When we talk about that, we want to get a little bit more of an insight on what does always on perception mean. So my question to Dr. Brojeshwar is, what does always on perception mean in practice?
Thanks, Rudra. Thanks for the questions. And thank you, Professor Ramani, for the insightful talk, which enlightened the audience and us both in a significant aspect. So always on is a term which is coming up due to the glasses that Professor Ramani showed in his keynote. So these glasses are coming up with the form factor like I am wearing it. And these glasses are having cameras, multiple sensors. And as we move with these glasses in our everyday life, we are going to get petabytes of data continuously. And this kind of data needs to be encoded or needs to be analyzed for getting the correct semantic, meaningful information. Now, if this data is coming, streaming continuously as we move with the glasses or with these cameras, therefore, the intelligence behind this, which is creating this semantic information, has to be always on in the back. And that's why we called it always on AI or always on perception. Now, this particular thing has kind of three different problems to be solved, and which is currently an open research challenge in the community, which is how to encode this entire data that we are perceiving for a day-long or week-long or a month-long activities. That is number one. Number two, even if we are able to encode it or represent it in the computer, then how to derive the information which we called world model. Professor Ian Lekun has been saying these things for a long, that how a person works or how a person relates to the geometry of other objects or hand-object interactions or object-object interactions, how things evolves. So how to get those kind of informations from all those petabytes of data that we have just now encoded. So once we are able to create that world model, we can also go for user model to understand the behavior of a user with respect to the world. How the user is doing those things. What are the grammars being followed? If we are able to automatically derive all those users and world model, then we can give a contextual guidance to the users in those cases where he or she needs assistance. And therefore, we can create a genius partner to the user who is always in their head. They are assisting on their request, and they are always on at the background to understand what the human needs or what the human sees or understand or would like to get facilitated upon. So I guess this is what the always on perception or always on intelligence, what Professor Ramani was saying, the spatial intelligence which understands our surroundings with respect to us, and that will lead to new forms of AI, new forms of advancement in the technology, which will help the human being in next few decades. I guess that's what my perception is from the always on.
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive description, and I know it sets the ground for the next few questions. So for taking up from there, now that we've talked about what always on can capture, question to Dr. Jainendra is, where do you think we should draw the boundary between helpful context and surveillance? Because we are always watching. So where do we draw the boundary?
Yeah, so Rudra, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks to Bridgesher and the team for organizing this. And it was a wonderful talk by Professor Karthik. So thanks to the talk. And now, I mean, the question to your answer, I guess, I know perhaps many are willing to understand it as a technical boundary and technical limitation, but I will say the limitation is perhaps less technical, but more on the cognitive front. So basically, I was just coming from a meeting to join this panel discussion, and during the meeting, what happened, which I will describe in 30 seconds, that one colleague was trying to prepare some draft. And what was happening, that suddenly he started getting so many suggestions from different, other colleagues who were there in the meeting, that the colleague was like, hey, let me take a step back and let me do the job. Please don't, invade my mental space there. And I think this is the same thing I would like to say about this boundary here that you mentioned, that the essential question, I guess, is what is required, rather than, what are the capabilities of AI or what are the capabilities of XR or what can be done by XR. And when we start thinking about that what is required by the user, then we start understanding that the limitation essentially is on the user side. So basically the user's attention is limited. So anything, I mean, Bridgesha just talked about this always on, technologies. So of course, always on means this continuous sensing. So just because something is always on continuously sensing doesn't mean it has to continuously intervene as well, right? So basically always on sensing does not have to become always on intervention as well. So this is where I guess the boundary is. So as long as these XR systems are, or AI plus HCI systems, they are trying to assist the users without unnecessarily invading into the mental space of the user, I would say that is healthy and fine. But the moment it goes beyond that, that is where essentially the surveillance starts happening, right? And the user starts noticing that, oh, I'm being continuously watched. And on the top of that, I'm receiving continuous interventions. And perhaps this is where the boundary is, that essentially, when we are developing or designing these technologies, we have to understand that the human cognition or the human attention essentially is going to be limited always, no matter what the capabilities of the system or the AI is going to be. And hence, we have to be careful when we are going to invade the mental space of the human, and with a very clear approach that it should be with the idea that we are going to assist the user with the task that the user requires, not necessarily to show the users what are the capabilities of the system that we are having. So I guess that is where the boundary of between the surveillance and then the context I would like to draw.
I think that's a very good insight, that we have to take feedback from the users as well to understand when to intervene. So great, thank you. And that actually helps us also answer the next question, but I would like to know more from Dr. Devaditto. So one question from you for you is, what would you think would be a killer use case that really truly requires egocentric perception and what we cannot do by a phone camera?
Yeah, I guess coming forth, I have some limited options because a lot has been covered by the wonderful talk given by Professor Ramani, and thank you for this opportunity, and it was a great talk. So there are many killer applications. The best would be, because I personally deal with it every day, is memory assistance, and I'm pretty excited about that, and one of my PhD students is working on it, and we're trying to see how do we remember stuff, right? What do we think is important? So are we looking at where it will be used in the future? Is that what informs our memory and what we keep in our memory bank? Because we have limited memory, right? We know all when we sleep, something goes from a short-term memory to a long-term memory to get committed. So how to make this memory grounded, accurate, so that it answers things correctly for us, that it does not say, if I left the key there, it says that no, you left it somewhere else, right? So grounded and fast. I don't want to wait for that answer. I could have searched it and figured it out, right? And the third thing that I'm looking for is basically fast response, right? And accuracy, fast response, and something which can work on device, because I don't want my memories to be uploaded, right? So that's a killer application. And a phone is very difficult because you have to always keep on holding it so that it looks at the same perspective as you. So something of the interesting form factors with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses and the others that Professor Ramanika showed could be the way forward, where memory assistance becomes more and more immersed into our lives. And that is probably a very, very killer application. Another thing, a small aside, is the social navigation, right? I sometimes say this, I remember the person, I can vaguely remember their name, but I don't remember their name, right? And we meet many such people. In many cases, it becomes socially embarrassing. So I would think as a personal aid for me, it would probably help that if I have an agent who remembers those, but whom to remember? Because we meet thousands of people, right, in our professional and personal lives. So how do we prioritize whom to remember? So these are problems I think would be clear applications for augmented reality and mixed reality. Yeah.
Fantastic. And yes, memory definitely is a great contribution that we can make. So thanks for that perspective, Dr. Devaditya. So now if we look at what we look at and what we can draw from that, one is memory and the other is the information from the scene. So here is a question to Professor Shanmuga. That what do you think democratized creation really looks like? Because we now have those technologies where we can recreate what we see. Mm-hmm. Can a novice really generate usable content with natural language and gestures? What is your view?
Yeah, thanks for having me in the panel. It's a privilege to meet you all and talk in this panel. And yeah, I agree with Rudro that for decades, creating a 3D object or environment required mastering incredibly complex software like Blender, Maya, or Unreal Engine, which people used to take quite a lot of time to master, and they were called artists, and only some privileged set of people who mastered this art were good at creating some 3D stuff. And they had to learn about, let's say, polygon counts, UV mapping, normal maps, rigging. So we did some rigging for some of our works. We were never an artist. The recent work at ICAST, we rigged avatars and created synthetic data ourselves. So all of them were possible because of the advent of a lot of new software like Unity environment and other things. So any programmer can become an artist. So that's how the things have become. And today, democratized creation means like shifting the human role from technical execution to creative direction. You direct them using some few lines of code, and the software does most of the things. And yeah, a complete novice can absolutely generate usable professional grade 3D content today using just natural language and intuitive gestures. And to address the first one, natural language, there are softwares like Meshi, which is in the 6th generation now, I guess, and Microsoft Copilot 3D and World Labs have something called Marble, and they have turned text to the ultimate 3D. They are the multimodal interfaces. You insert some text and you get nice 3D interfaces, and you can give an example of for flower vase with these flowers, and within few seconds or minutes, it gives you a very realistic 3D mesh of nice flower vase in a room, properly illuminated, and all those things. And it is quite usable also. Like earlier, it used to be clunky and blocky artifacts used to be there. Now it's so clear that these softwares replace the professional artists who would have mastered all those things and everything, right? All those softwares I mentioned earlier, and it took a lot of time to engage in it. And the gesture part comes up in like softwares like Apple Vision Pro and other VR interfaces. They are add-ons to them. So some of the softwares I could think of are like 3D description, and there is one World Labs Chisel. So you can use your hand to like block out some space. Some object is put by the 3D interface. So you make some gestures, remove those objects. Or if you want your flower vase to be bigger, so you use your hand gesture to just blow it up. It is something like what you do in the normal documents. You just zoom it up for your reading and everything. So all of them help us to create very nice things. So in short, the democratization means you don't need to have a very high compute also, like you needed a workstation, right? Or you needed a proper training. So all of them are not required. Even a teacher, for an example, a school teacher wants to take a history topic, so they want to illustrate using some Harappan artifacts, for an example. They can draw it using these tools and then take it to the class and explain. So it is as simple as that. We are able to create like very realistic and physically based rendered 3D models, which we can create with proper illumination, proper material properties, proper kind of texture and everything, so which are readily usable. So these are the advent of these tools which I mentioned are what have enabled this process. And we are also quite using this kind of tools, and we are creating some tools also. For an example, in this WHCV or WACP, which was held 2 weeks back, we along with Adobe, we released a text-to-video synthesis. So it is called synthesizing compositional video with text using textual description. So we have the state-of-the-art text-to-video generation module, which we just presented in WHCV. So the same thing can be extended to VR by creating 3D environments which are physically realistic. This is an exciting space to be in. Yeah.
Thank you. And from the answer, the audience also got a lot of insight on where to pursue creation and what softwares to use. So it was a good short description of the technology and the field. So from there, if we look at creation and its utility in authoring or assistance, a question to Dr. Brajeshwar is that if we borrow items and assets from the real world and reconstruct, how accurate does the reconstruction need to be to it to be a utility? What is good enough for planning, training, robotic simulation, and other applications?
So thanks, Rudra, for the question, and I would like to continue from what Shanmuga just now described. So 3D assets are being used for, as you said, different purposes, simulations, training, and all. However, the fidelity of the assets are very important to understand that how much importance of the precise measurements in the 3D asset that we would like to have for our application. Now, Shanmuga just now told that they have technology or we have today technology which democratize these creations through text, and they are being used for different purposes. Let's say for procedural training or robotic simulation, we would like to train a robot with a object in simulation which looks much more realistic with respect to the physical counterpart. Now, what if it is not? Then the robot is training or getting trained on something which doesn't have relevance or resembles with the physical counterpart, and therefore when the robot will be in the real scenario, it may fail or it may create something which is unwanted. Now, today, due to these democratizations of these 3D asset generations with text and all modalities, this particular high fidelity object or scene generations are possible. However, this is still an unsolved problem because with text, it's very difficult to convey what is exactly in my mind. For example, take the flower vase example that Professor Shanmuga just gave. So flower vase has many shapes, and within that shapes there are many interior designs that are possible, that is there in human mind. But when you are trying to describe that through a text, oftentimes it's very difficult for a human being to describe the very nitty-gritty of the flower vase. So we try to come up with a strategy, and I call them a XR prompt, a new GenAI prompt for XR, which is a sketch. Because we are with this kind of a glass, we can always give a sketch as a prior to the geometry, which is a rough sketch, along with some text, which is the semantics of the geometry, so that the computer can understand or AI can understand what is the shape, what is the design that the user wants for whatever the downstream activities that user want to do it with that, so that the generation of 3D asset with high fidelity is as accurate as the imaginations of the users is. So we called it translating imaginations into reality through a prompt like sketch. Now, this is not required for navigations of a robot. Now, there the fidelity can be very low because robot navigation requires only a free space analysis, whether the objects of the space is free or occupied. And that can enable a robot to reach from point A to point B. So it depends upon the applications, that the coarseness to fineness of the 3D geometry that needs to be reconstructed or generated. So I would rather say that go for generations when the fidelity requirement is very high. And if you are having a XR, use this new prompt in terms of sketch along with the semantics with text. But if you are going in a simulation or in the navigation space, then a very coarse geometry should be fine because you just want to get a free space. So there's a I would say transition between the coarseness and the fineness depending upon the end objective. But today with the AI and reconstruction paradigm, both are possible.
Great. I think what I understand is that we can, of course, decide on the fidelity, and the prompt in itself also decides the fidelity and the application. So from here, if we look at what are the ways we can prompt or capture data from the environment and then merge it with the reconstruction, a question to Dr. Jainendra is, when we train these systems for our tuning or our purpose, what is the best method to learn from the experts? Is it video imitation, motion capture, multimodal logs, hybrid? What do you think is the best way?
Yeah, so thanks, Rudra, for the question. So, of course, I mean, as of now, this imitation learning, as we call it, I mean, has become one of the gold standards of learning among the machines, different types of machines, even in the XR environments, right? But I think, again, I would like to take a step back here. And I think what I would like to say here that, of course, this video or motion capture, they can tell us about how the behavior is being replicated, or what exactly is the behavior that is being replicated. But if you really want to understand the true expertise of the humans, then essentially the true expertise is not only about what they are doing, it's also about that why they are doing it, and then particularly how they are doing it. So for example, how they are acting when things are constrained, when there are some constraints under which they are operating, right? So similarly for the XR environment, for example, if I were to describe it, then perhaps I think a better way would be to perhaps we can capture the attention policies and try to understand that how these experts which are doing a particular job, they are shifting their attention in response to the context in which they are operating. And perhaps it's going to be a very hybrid approach. You will have this egocentric kind of perception, actions, and contextual signals. But again, these will be organized around what we can call it as, or what is known as essentially the reconstruction of the decision points, not just the actions that a particular expert is taking. So for example, in a recently submitted work, what we showed there, that you may have heard about the Bloom's taxonomy, I mean, that we use to enable the education and assess, do model assessment across different levels. And now what has been shown here, for the same particular task, I mean, it can be shown that the gaze pattern of looking at a question and responding to a particular answer changes depending upon if it's a recall type of a question or if it's an analytical question. And so basically, it's not only about that what they are doing, but it's also about in which context they are operating and why they are doing it and how they are doing it. So I think if you were to just replicate or imitate this behavior of experts by looking at this, motion sensors or imitation learning kind of thing, then we will just have a surface level replication of the experts. And if we can truly model the attention and the decision structure of the humans, I believe then only we can have the actual transfer of the expertise of the humans to the AI systems, or for that matter in the XR system. So I think that is where perhaps we need to move, and that is how we can advance here.
Great, thank you for that answer. And yes, contextual understanding and application-based information, and in a way, will really help us go towards the right direction. And here, if we look at when we are thinking of training, a question to Professor Ramani is, how do we evaluate understanding in XR? Because we need to understand what modes of input we need, and what metrics really capture correct contextual interpretation over time.
Yeah, thank you for the question. In fact, a lot of the current discussion we are seeing, if you invert them, we have been talking about what is possible. Just like Growth said, what is not possible. Right? You can say you can get something. AI is doing a lot. So controllability, first of all, is missing. And also what you're thinking to what AI thinks you're thinking, it's a huge gap. It's not that what you think AI gets it. There's nothing it is artificial. It's not real intelligence, like your intelligence. The gap is big. So mind the gap. In fact, mind the gap was the main drive behind many of the very early HCI work. So beyond that, perception, interpreting perception, getting the context correctly. Easy to say context, but context itself is not well defined. We understand context very easily. Will the machine understand the context like you are? I mean, today, LLMs just understand the local language of what you're talking about, and it sort of mimics that local language. Does it truly understand the language? Does it have long-term memory? All of that, all those problems in LLM will pervade into AI because we are trying to create reality, and language is only one small view of reality. There's so much more in your head beyond language. Language is finite, okay, finite dictionary, but the real world is infinite. Video itself is infinite. Real world is even more infinite. So you can't just capture with language and vision alone. So context becomes tricky. Second is stability over time, right? Like temporal. That is, again, very important. Latency and a lot of these other things come. And part of the early part of my work, we are sort of saying like humans can estimate, a lot of things very easily without thinking. You can walk, drink, you're typing on the phone and walking. You're doing multiple things at one time. Okay, for machines to do it, it's much harder to do multiple things like how we do, and they don't do it like us. In fact, quite opposite to what we do in many cases. And also action alignment, right? Aligning. When I say something, when I do something, Roj was saying I'm sketching and saying, right? Aligning constraints. How is the alignment going to come between the various things that I do? That again is becoming very important. And then the validation. That's why in HCI, if you look at it, we always validate, do a lot of experiments, and try to understand whether how good you're doing what you're doing, right? It's hard to get into the human brain. So all these are all proxies for how we try to create reality. So a lot of gaps are there, and we'll have to continue to push these directions. AI, of course, as we know, is going to help. So interpreting, maintaining, producing these action, guiding us, and making the immersive experience as close to real as possible. All these have to happen.
Yes, absolutely. And what we understand from a scene is not what an AI understands. That is a very important concept that outside the research community, it's difficult to grasp. And from there, let me ask a question to Dr. Devaditto, is that because of this intent is so different between man and machine, how do we model user intent without actually being intrusive? Example, when we detect when help is needed or when we need to stay silent.
Yeah, I mean, so fantastic question. And I think some of it has been covered, but let me give, so I have been working on this idea for quite some time. I was thinking about it as well. So the first paper that I kind of wrote on, like in back to 2022, was latent goal learning. And can we model intent as latent? Now, unobtrusiveness, or how to basically think about when the AI is helpful, nowadays is possible. This is pre-LLM, LLM generalized era, is that you ask, help me do this, right? Simple voice commands and all. And somebody asked me this, that why don't just say this? But this is good for procedural actions, where there is something that I'm trying to follow. There's a sequence of actions that I'm trying to follow. As Professor Ramani was saying, we try to do multiple things at once. And sometimes we forget something, we stop something in the middle, and then we do that important thing, or a phone call comes or something happens, and then we keep on continuing that action. So understanding human intent is, first of all, very, very difficult, especially in unscripted, our real life activities of daily living, right? Secondly, when it should do, of course, users have to have control over that when they want help with things. Maybe I'm cooking a new recipe, I'm trying to follow along, and I face some issues, or I'm trying to build something to DIY and stuff like that. I'll explicitly turn it on. But user intent by itself is very, very difficult to understand, right? So I am currently looking at certain directions which are like how to ignore irrelevant actions. What is irrelevant given this context? And if I don't explicitly tell the assistant that I am going to do this, can it infer it from a few actions that it has seen? Of course, filtering and ignoring the things that are irrelevant. So these are very open research directions, and there is a lot of work in planning, a lot of work in robotics which deals with this. But with this advent of AI models which we can talk to and they can understand my intent, they have world knowledge, they have a sort of very good general and world knowledge, they can kind of narrow down the search space of intent quite easily. But then again, at the end of the day, it has to ask me, are you actually trying to do this? And maybe once we confirm, because conversational AI is a reality now, it can do better things. So that's my perspective.
Great. Thank you for that answer. And yes, understanding what is relevant intent and what is irrelevant intent definitely is an open research problem. So from here, a question to Professor Ramani is, if we create safe robotic simulation spaces, because that is a way we can model intent, what new experiments become possible that were previously too risky or costly that is now there with us?
Yeah, good switch to robotics, right? If the robot was real, a real robot, which is running, would you sit next to it? Would you take it for a walk like you take your dog, right? So getting near robots is very hard. And now humanoids have come. Safety is going to be a big issue. Okay, it's going to operate in spaces where its proximity to the human is going to be very questionable. We are very squishy as humans, right? We can be soft, we can be hard, we can control a lot of our contact impedance. When you hit the table with my hand, I can stop. We know a lot of things we naturally do, right? So robots are not safe in the current hard robotic space, right? So when we say simulation, right, of course, with AR, you can do a lot of these simulations. And perhaps if there are some guarantees and safeties in those simulations, it's going to open up a lot of things, because before you deploy, you want to test, you want to see what's going on, right? So what we have done is we have created, of course, I don't go near the humanoid when it's playing table tennis. We have created simulation spaces where we can train thousands and thousands of these humanoids to play table tennis using reinforcement learning. Just to give you a very quick snapshot, I'm going to quickly share this and take it off right after. But basically, if you can see the screen here, you can see this is a simulation space where thousands of humanoids are playing table tennis, and they have simple learning functions, place to hit a ball, height above the net, just two of them. And with that, in the simulation, we are able to successfully train the humanoid to make the real one play. Okay, and we are one of the first to, me and my colleague, she works on humanoids. We are one of the first to actually demonstrate what we call full body control for the real humanoid. In a quick snapshot, you don't see me next to the humanoid. I'm far away, right? But the idea here is being able to simulate, and then there's this big gap, which people often call sim to real gap, right? That gap has to be overcome, and a lot of effort is going on there, including billions of dollars being thrown into the space by NVIDIA and so on and so forth. But the sim to real gap is very huge, and great space for research to get in this area. And in fact, if your question becomes real, it'll open up an entire new division for TCS. So the possibility is endless in terms of how you can bring the sim and real closer to each other. It's just a simple example of moving, a skill that we as humans sort of learned into a robotic space. It's single, how to make it more general. That's always the question in AI, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, one way we can look at being closer to real is to make the simulation closer to real, to generate content that is closer to real. So here's a question to Professor Shanmuga. is that in context of this guidance, there needs to be a lot of content generated, realistic content, so that it bridges the gap. How do we ensure these generated assets match the physical environment in scale lighting, materials? What is your view on that?
Yeah. So what I would say is like generating a 3D asset from a LiDAR or from a camera, and then doing some deep techniques to create a 3D asset is only half the battle. And we need to, for a egocentric guidance where an AI system guides the task, for an example, like maneuvering some automobile, or like doing a physical therapy, or whatever is the task at hand, or moving a chair, or pushing a car, or everything, right? So all those things, a 3D asset is useless if the interaction is not like very realistic. So the hand goes inside the 3D asset, or it is not looking as if it is grasping the actual 3D asset, right? So to make the generated content actually helpful, the system must perform a real-time handshake between the virtual object, which is the 3D asset created, and the physical world, right? So there are three things, like you told, the scale, right? One of the things is the metric depth, we call it, right? There are algorithms which can predict metric depth from even images, but the techniques which are used in practice, which when you have a good budget, is SLAM, like visual SLAM, using cameras or some IMUs and other things, and also a LiDAR. So you use it to sense the environment, like how accurate in terms of millimeter or centimeter it is, so that we have the good sense of the environment where the 3D asset is going to be placed. And you also this gives you a very realistic feeling. For an example, even a virtual 3D asset is put in an environment and someone occludes, so it should not look like the 3D asset is protruding. So it should go behind the person, or 3D asset is occluding a real person. It should look realistic. So these kind of things can be enabled by technologies which can do this scale level thing, which is also called spatial mapping. So this can enable that. And the other thing is the ambient lighting estimation. So there are many methods. So even from single image, there are lighting estimation methods which can relight them in different configuration. The same kind of approach can be used on the generated 3D asset. So how realistically a point light source or environmental light source can map the object. So we have worked in last year's WACV on illumination mapping or illumination planning, right? So you have a physical object, and what are the directions in which you need to light the image, so that combining those images, we can get the 3D asset properly. So these are some of the works which are coming up. And after getting the 3D asset also, what are the accurate directions in which you need to illuminate so that it looks physically realistic and blends well with the real environments. And the third one is the material itself. So what is the 3D material composed of, right? So normally in textbooks, you would have studied about the albedo, or a matte, or a Lambertian surface, right, which is measured by the albedo, or it is also called a diffuse reflecting surface. And there are surfaces which are glossy, like mirror or a steel or something like that. But in physical world, there are substances which are mix of both. Some may be matte or Lambertian dominated, some may be glossy or diffuse, the glossy or kind of specular reflection dominated. So how to create a realistic surface on the 3D asset so that it gels well, interacts with the lighting, and appears as uniform. So the main concern is to estimate something called spatially varying BRDF, so that we can model this 3D asset properly, the surface and texture, so that it gels well with the 3D environment. We have some work, if someone is interested, in ECCV 2024 from a single image, how to estimate this SVBRDF parameters and relight any asset. So something like that, from a single image you capture, and you reconstruct 3D also by relighting the same object in 2D with the different illuminations, and then create a 3D asset. So there are a lot of works which are coming in, which could help blend the 3D asset realistically, so that we don't distinguish between that. And apart from that, there is the grasping and kind of techniques are coming where the human hand, which is the real hand, should look like holding the virtual object seamlessly and also interact with it seamlessly. So there are a lot of techniques in computer vision as well as in robotics, the intersection of computer vision and robotics, which has made such a interaction happening, and these AR/VR systems are becoming not a part, but it becomes synonymous with the real world itself, not a separate part apart from the real world systems. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's fascinating how one question can really give direction to so many research topics. So it's a good insight to all our audience to where to look next for the solutions to these problems. So a related question to Dr. Jainendra is that when we generate and we need feedback, how do we design those feedback loops for the user so that guidance is helpful and it's not annoying? So how do we understand more about that?
Yeah, so thanks again, Rudra, for the question. So, I mean, with respect to this, I would again say, like, fundamentally, it's not the problem of the capabilities that these systems have. I think they have a lot of capabilities, but again, I would like to put the human at the center and say that it's a control problem. And then to give you an example of this, I mean, you may have experienced, and we have experienced, like since last 1 or 2 years, this ChatGPT and Gemini and all their LLMs, what they now started doing is that at the end of their responses, now they have a tag which says something like, would you like me to something, after every response. Now, while it may seem like that they are being helpful, but what in reality they are doing, and one of my students is now working on this particular phenomena itself, is that it can short circuit the reasoning capability of the individual itself. So it is not necessarily helping the individual in making a decision, but it's essentially sort of making them dependent and short circuiting their own reasoning process itself. So basically, and I think I indicated about it when Brajeshwar was talking about this always on perception, right? So just because we have an always on perception, it doesn't mean that it has to be an always on interaction mode as well, right? So perhaps we can shift this, from the continuous assistance to what we can call it as a kind of event driven assistance. So we're doing the assistance only when it is required, only at certain meaningful moments. And, these meaningful moments are usually the moments when we are typically at a decision boundary, when, for example, when the uncertainty is very, very high for us about making a decision, or for example, when then error is very likely to occur, or for example, when we are transitioning between tasks. So if we can detect these points, if we can enable the system detect these points, and then system can only intervene at these particular points and remain silent most of the time, I think they can become really, really helpful. And now if you look at the XR, the problem with the XR can be, I think, even more stronger, because the system for the XR is embedded directly in our perception system, right? So the key idea would be not to guide more or not to guide continuously, but to understand what are the right and the key moments when the user requires the assistance, when the user requires some guidance, and only at those moments provide these meaningful interventions. I think that is what would be the key of this feedback loop assistance.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you. And of course, we need the user input for the guidance. I'll just take the two questions from the audience that we have gotten through this throughout this webinar, and I'll just ask the questions to the people who it was in whose context these questions were posed. So the first question came during our keynote. That was to Professor Ramani, that can we experience these applications mentioned ourselves somewhere? So I think you have covered in brief, but if you want to add something, please do.
Yeah. So one place you can experience is you can come to our lab. But that's a wrong answer. We have in the past engaged in commercializing our research and have been pretty successful, both in the robotic area, but also the first commercial visual search engine for mechanical parts that were created in our lab. So we have a lot of experiences in that area. In particular, in the immersive reality area, our lab holds in my opinion, the highest number of patents of any academic institution. So we have the commercial intent. And every time our students go from our lab working in Meta or Amazon, I tell them it's not going to become real now. The time has not come. And each cycle, I see this happen. So there's going to be a new cycle, again, starting in extended reality. And this time, the leaders in this area are actually Android XR, Google, and they are making the system separate from the headsets and gears. So just like in PC, you can take and use in others. Here, of course, Samsung is one of them, but many others can create it. So I think this cycle is going to be a different cycle. Meta is still in space, of course, because of the vast importance of AI in the flat world, LLMs and others. The budgets have shifted to this other area. Meta, in fact, wanted to become the dominant company. They even named the company after the metaverse. But that said, the future potential is there. And we think that some of our systems are going to find its way. And we are working, including with TCS research, and we are looking at pathways for making things go forward. In particular, the XR-Fi, which I talked about in the last, going from video to procedural AR, that has huge promise because anyone can sort of create these procedural experiences. So I would ask to wait for the real world to happen. But meanwhile, if you want to experience potentially through Broj and our relationship with TCS, or come to our labs. But I think in the next 5 years, some commercial systems are likely to implement it, including with Android XR.
Great. Thank you for that response. Our next question was asked during Dr. Brojeshwar's response of XR sketch as a prompt. So the question is that, can we also give a real sketch as a prompt to these systems?
I don't know what the real sketch means. Means maybe you can try to say that I would like to draw a sketch in a paper or iPad somewhere, and you would like to get that 3D asset to be generated. Then it's yes. However, they are 2D sketches, so your depth and any kind of I would say complicated maneuvering across the depth is not going to be visible or possible. However, whatever we are working on in our ICPJ base paper, WCB papers, that we are creating the sketch while you are wearing these glasses. So you are creating the sketch in your canvas, 3D canvas in the XR. And that's a completely infinite space where you can move around and draw a sketch. And that sketch becomes your prior of your 3D objects. And our generative AI algorithms are going to be generating the sketch or the 3D surfaces that corresponding to the sketch. Now, to do so, we need many datas of sketches which are like human drawn. And for that, we have now maybe one of the largest data, like 1 million data for the 3D objects to sketches, and that's what our WSB paper is. And that sketch is now going to create a new or generate new 3D objects through our diffusion model. But here, yes, you can. The short answer is you can use your 2D sketches, which are physical in paper or in the iPad, but they lack the depth ambiguities and all. However, if you are having the extra glasses, then you have the options to create the 3D sketches directly by roaming around the sketches and seeing where you would like to add the nitty-gritty part or where to delete something. And you can also edit once the 3D objects are generated. That's also in our pipeline.
Great. Thank you for that response. So now we have finished our round of audience questions. So quickly, let us take some concluding remarks as well as some other questions that I wanted to ask from our panelists. So I'll just ask this question to Dr. Devaditto, because this is something that is related to what has been discussed, but we want your perspective on how do we handle ambiguity between systems and humans, because the understanding between systems and humans is different. So let's conclude with that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully it will cover certain things that we have not covered, but we have kind of covered more or less what is ambiguous. But I am always fascinated by this. And the best way I think about this is that if the robot predicts something and verifies that this has happened in the real world, it can resolve its ambiguity. Of course, the cost of that, right? The robot expecting you to cut a wire or not giving you proper inputs, and then you cut a wire and something catastrophic happens, right, to you. So there are low-level ambiguities, low-risk ambiguities, and high-risk ambiguities that we are talking about, right? So perhaps the best way to handle ambiguity is that we have to do anticipation. And I've been working explicitly in this field for quite some time, action anticipation. Can the robot anticipate what you're trying to do? And nowadays, with nice VLMs, vision language models, the robot is able to perceive and able to form user intent, model it to a certain extent, and then is able to think what is going to happen in the real world. Of course, real world doesn't happen similar to what the robot is imagining, because the robot's imagination is more or less the general imagination, and every person does the same activity differently, right? But currently, the state of the art, or what we are trying to do, what we have is basically in procedural actions, the robot can easily flag mistakes that the person is having, so it can avoid ambiguity. But in case if the person is doing multiple things at once, right? There are multiple interleaved goals, multiple goals that the person is pursuing, and there are interleaved actions within that, right? How do we then perceive? Has the user really left that complete activity, or is he going to come back and do it later? So I think the planning people, the CS people, the AI people all need to come together in order to maybe solve this puzzle of ambiguity and what it actually means. And to be sure, even we as people are sometimes not clear of the user's intentions, right? So it's not really a robotic problem or an AI problem, right? So we also make observations, like we have Markov processes, we also make observations, so you become more and more and more confident. That's the classical way. Perhaps you have to go back to that and maybe prompt a little bit. The AI has to prompt a little bit and say, are you really going to do this? I think you're going to do this, right? So I think that feedback and learning and modifying their goals, modifying the intent, modifying the perception of the intent, all of this, along with stellar improvements in AI, are going to maybe scratch at ambiguity a bit and maybe try to solve it as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. And yes, I totally agree to understand what to model and be able to understand and differentiate between what is relevant. So a question to Dr. Brojeshwar, which I think will summarize what we want to discuss in this webinar. What do you think is the outlook of experiential technologies? Where do you see it in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a very challenging question, but it should definitely solve Devaditya's memory problem. But yes, the question has many facets. So there are hardware evolutions going on. There are software evolutions going on. So I guess we are going to get a device which are much more ergonomically fitted to the human head, and we should be able to wear for a day-long usage. That's the number one. There are sensor advantage also, that we are going to get this SLMs and all functional within those glasses. We are going to get holograms also in few years, so that even if you don't have these glasses, we should be able to see virtual conferencing. And like the way today we are meeting on the Zoom, as Professor Ramani was saying, we could have done this in a hologram setup. However, the hardware has to evolve. This is all display, but we have to also see how the interactions hardwares are going to evolve. So today, touch, force, feedback, and all are requiring gloves, and which is very difficult to wear. Imagine a doctor is going to train for a surgery. Wearing a gloves and training for a surgery on a virtual cadaver is very difficult problem for them. So what if we have this mid-air haptics kind of a situation where you are holding that surgical instrument on your bare hand, and you are still feeling the force through some ultrasound or something, that sort of. So those devices are also going to be emerged, and these are going to lead to a new technological or new hardware trends. So keeping aside these hardware trends, we also have to look for the software trends. We are a software company, and we are mainly innovating there. So I would say that Devaditya initially told that the memory is very, very important. I'd like to call upon that particular statement with a subtle notion. Is called inattentive blindness. So many times things are in our front, but we will not be able to see them. And it happens in our daily lives. Have I locked my door well before leaving the room? And we don't know. We have to go back and check. So what if my always-on perceptions is trying to facilitate me by answering the questions that happened due to me in some point in time earlier, and retrieve that when I'm asking my genius partner or my classes that, okay, what has been done before, right? So all those in attentional blindness and on in context awareness that whatever is happening, I should be able to interpret them, I should be able to understand them and get guidance from my classes. In procedural training, if a novice is not aware of how to repair a AC, it should be able to repair the AC by the help of these classes, by taking out the manual. So these are the software innovations, and obviously, like Shanmuga and all told, these generative AI simulations, these are different paradigm. I would say ultimately this area should going to impact on the human intelligence, like augmenting human memory and intelligence, augmenting human imaginations and creativity, as well as some intuitive interfaces where user will be much more able to use the entire 3D canvas around him or her to interact upon in the physical world. I guess both these hardware and software innovations will lead to or pave the next decade of research in this SCI area.
Great. Thank you for those concluding remarks, and for everyone who was part of this. Thank you, Professor Ramani, Professor Shanmuga, Dr. Devaditto, Dr. Jainendra, and Dr. Brojeshwar for being part of the panel as well as the keynote. Thank you, Dr. Venki, for being part of the starting and opening address from ACM. I'd also like to thank our organizers who helped out with the technicalities and the planning from TCS Innovation team, Kushi, Karan, Parikshit, and also our webmasters, Dilip. So today I realized, and I think all of us have, that though we are experts in diverse fields, today there was a synergy between the different fields that we were able to bring out. And that is what I think the audience can take back. So I think we can end here, and thank you all. So we can end the webinar live telecast.
Thank you, Rudra, for moderating it so well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rudra, and thanks for all the expert members for their opinions and insights. Thanks a lot. Nice being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks to the
It was
whole
great.
team.
It was great.
Yeah, very well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Very well done.